Welcome to iPad Pros, the show all about using your iPad to be productive and get work done. I'm Tim Chen, host of the show.
This episode of iPad Pros is sponsored by Agenda. Learn more at www.agenda.com.
Also, though, I think this is why I think this is a big year for shortcuts, is so many people come in, they're like automations, and then it doesn't work automatically, and they're like, I'm never going to use this again. That was stupid. So, like, now it actually works when you say it.
Welcome back to another episode of iPad Pros. This is an exciting one. iPadOS 17 is now out for everyone, and along with that, a new version of Shortcuts, Shortcuts version 7. And as I have on each and every year since 2018, Matthew Cassinelli is with us today to dive deep into Shortcuts version 7. What has Apple added over the summer, and also what have they taken away? As you'll hear in this discussion, lots of actions were removed during the beta process, and hopefully they get added back at some point during the year. So that's what this episode is all about, shortcuts and all of the additions that you have to look forward to, including true automation this year. You can find Matthew's work at MatthewCassinelli.com. And my thanks to Matthew for his time with this very in-depth chat, as we do every year, to dive into all things shortcuts. If you want to support this podcast, the best thing to do is go out and download Agenda, who is sponsoring this episode of iPad Pros. I'll be sharing a bit later in this episode about Agenda's iOS and iPadOS 17 update, as well as how I use Agenda's shortcut actions to automate Agenda. But for now, head over to agenda.com to learn more and get started with this awesome app that I've used for years at this point to produce the show. And with that, here's my discussion with Matthew, all about Shortcuts version 7. Enjoy.
Welcome back to the podcast, Matthew.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure as always.
Yeah, we've. I'm not sure if do we start with Shortcuts version 1 back in the day? I forget how long we've been doing this.
Maybe. I feel like we always start this show by trying to remember how many times we've recorded. But
we are. I had to look at
annual tradition.
Yeah, I had to look at past episodes to figure out what version of Shortcuts this officially is, and it's officially version 7. So this feels like, we had the iOS 7. Seems like that was like a big deal as far as like the OS is getting matured, and wow, Shortcuts is getting old at this point.
Yeah, it's weird. It's the fact that it's been out for 7 years is like, doesn't make sense.
It's kind of wild, yeah. We weren't quite sure when Apple acquired them what would happen, and best possible scenario, I think, here.
Definitely. I'd say we're getting into like the beyond realm of like, I don't know. We'll see with Vision Pro in the future, but like,
yeah, it's like it was one of the apps on the Vision Pro that you could sneak a peek. Oh, there's the Shortcuts icon on the Apple Vision Pro.
Well, it's not even that though. It's the app intent. We'll get into this later, but the app intents APIs that power Shortcuts power a lot of how interactive widgets work, and I think potentially some future stuff in Vision Pro. So
very cool.
Should be interesting.
Yeah. So for those that don't know who you are Matthew Cassinelli, and you are all things shortcuts. What all are you up to these days?
Since working at Apple, I've been doing independent stuff since Shortcuts came out, and that's been a lot of fun. Just recently, I started doing some more app consulting because there's a lot of apps out there that need shortcut support, a lot that adopted it like 2 to 3 years ago and then stopped. And so now I'm kind of trying to work more directly with some developers to just give advice on what they should do and specific for their app and things like that. So that's been fun.
Yeah, very cool and very useful for the community to make sure, when developers are paying attention to shortcuts, what they should actually be doing instead of just like, Starbucks has where you can reorder your coffee drink, which I'm sure a lot of people use, but
yeah. But every brand, some of them aren't super obvious, and other ones are, and there's always just optimizations, and it's kind of like, I know it when I see it, and so now you can hire me to do that officially for you if you have an app. So
yeah, and as you said, with the interactive widgets, that work can be used for other things, which will be cool.
Totally.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what's your iPad life like these days? How has that changed at all in the past year? And what's your current iPad setup these days?
It's definitely been interesting. The main the biggest difference this last year is I've been reviewing the M2 iPad Pro.
Yeah.
So I've been getting a taste of the latest and greatest because I still was on the 2018. And
yeah, a
2
lot of people
terabyte.
are rocking that one still. It's held its ground, yeah.
I'm pretty sure I was hitting the ceiling pretty hard there at the end, just because I have so many shortcuts and with so many widgets, even just memory and swapping and things like that, we're starting to struggle. And then I really wanted to test the external display stuff and Final Cut Pro type things. And so thankfully Apple was like, you can test it. So I have been working off of that, and that's been really good.
Is it
It's definitely
1 terabyte model or one of the lower storage models?
I think it's 1 terabyte. I think they always do that.
Yeah.
At least, so
well, you also get the 16 gigabytes of RAM with 1 terabyte. So that's
totally.
Why. Yeah.
So yeah, that's been fun. I really like the display too. Like watching, every once in a while, I'll be watching an Apple show and I'll be like, wait, this actually looks better on my iPad than my TV because the iPad screens are just like perfectly built for it.
Yeah, I watch a lot of shows there, and gets me excited for Apple Vision Pro because it'll be that, but movie theater size screen.
That'll be fascinating too. Yeah, I mean, I use all 3 sizes of iPad. I have an 11-inch from 2020, and then I also got an iPad mini. Awesome. And so I have been I always do balance and just like switch between them constantly, and I'm always trying to find the best combination. I do think I've kind of been struggling because I will always get my iPad really set up, and then, I have so many issues with shortcuts, home screen widgets failing and sync problems that sometimes shortcuts on the iPad just goes too slow for me, and on the Mac it's like one of many processes, and so it doesn't struggle as much.
Interesting. Okay.
So sometimes I do move away from that, but then there's been all this discussion lately about like iPad as a laptop replacement, and I never even fully went for that myself, but I think I've been trying to figure out where it fits more because if I don't have an iPad, I really don't just like being on the Mac all the time too. So there's definitely a place for it in my life at all times, and every single day I'm using an iPad and a Mac at the same time most of the time. So
what's the better shortcut building experience? Is it the Mac these days, or is the iPad and touching? And
it depends. I do think I like the touch experience, but I think it has been struggling for me personally because I have like over 3,000 shortcuts, and so during beta season it can be pretty rough to use the touch interface and just like typing in or just something is going a little too slow. I think it feels so much more natural though. I wish they added some of the keyboard shortcuts that were on the Mac to the iPad. They did most of them, but there's not the same. You can't click on a cell and then insert. If you use a keyboard shortcut on the Mac, it'll put, like, if you click on an action, you can press Command-Shift-V and it'll put a variable right after that.
Oh, nice.
On the iPad, it puts it at the bottom. And so, like, if they had some more of that in the editor, I'd probably use it.
Gotcha, yeah. You are a Final Cut Pro user on the Mac, is that accurate?
Yeah.
How have you found the iPad version so far?
I like it. I think in the same thing, I when I record streams, I do like 7 tracks, and it is like just above what Final Cut can handle.
Okay.
So I did run into quickly that my particular workflow wasn't perfect for it. Yeah. But I do think in terms of, again, the same thing as I use the iPad as part of the ecosystem. And so bringing in my footage to edit it down to make that first kind of assembly run, great on the iPad. And then I usually don't want to sit there on the Mac right after I record to do that either. So I'll bring it into Final Cut, trim it down, and do some of that basic storyline stuff. And then it's kind of like there's online editing and offline editing, and I'll do one half on the iPad and the other half on the Mac.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then as far as iPadOS 17, which, as you're listening to this, I believe will be out. How has this update changed how you use the iPad? I know we have interactive widgets, which are currently just now in beta, and that'll change a lot once that starts to roll out. But how's the iPadOS 17 been treating you?
I definitely like the stage manager changes. Those made a big difference just in terms of being able to actually use Windows where you want to. I'll say Shortcuts got the extra large widget, which that means I went to town with that. So I put every single one of my widgets into the Shortcuts extra large widget and redesigned my whole home screen around that.
That's awesome.
That's kind of been the major change, is just that it's kind of like iPadOS has caught up to where I was designing my home screens 3 years ago, with tons of shortcuts on the home screen. So now, even with interactive widgets, like I've had interactive widgets this whole time with shortcuts. So it's kind of like,
did
the rest will be
Shortcuts
great,
widget change its interactivity at all? Is it functionally the same, or did it?
No. A couple of years ago, they changed from the basic. It used to be like workflow UI, and then they pulled apart shortcuts into the Siri interface, and so that's still just part of the Siri stuff that pops over. So
gotcha.
It's always kind of like the widget itself is just telling the shortcut to run separately. So it's not like they were like truly interactive, but again, you could do it from the home screen without opening the app. So that's been the big thing. And it really is, like, I take it for granted because I've been using stuff from the home screen for the last few years, and now everybody else will be having the same kind of experience where the home screen is kind of like this place that you stay and do stuff from, rather than just immediately jumping into apps. So it does, especially on iPad, like that's what it's for. And a lot of times, even when I'm using it at my Mac, like universal control means I can still interact with it in the same way. So having a good iPad home screen, even if you're at a Mac, can still be really beneficial.
Have you dove into lock screen shortcuts on the iPad? Is that of use to you, or do you prefer just being on the bigger home screen that seems like a more natural place to live?
One of the problems that I'm having with the lock screens is that I have 10 of them, and so each individual widget is something that I don't see as often. Also, the iPad is asleep, so I tap it, and then I open it, and then I'm using it.
Right.
So there's like 1 second where I see the lock screen. I think this is a pretty clear precursor to the next iPad having a always-on display, or like even just a FaceTime, or not Face ID, like location awareness, like it could tell that you're there, so it lights up, sort of thing. Right. Because otherwise, right now, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But like,
yeah, it'd be cool if like your Apple Watch was nearby. How it would just be on if it's like plugged in or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Definitely. I think in general they need to make like the watch know that you're using the iPad, and the iPad, all those kind of like, they are vaguely aware of each other right now, but they're not very intelligently aware.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Anything else in the iPad world this past 12 months worth catching up on before we move on?
I'm not sure. I think in general, iPad is just kind of like chugging along the way it always has been. We'll get into some of the features that we had with shortcuts.
Yeah.
With like stage manager automations or display automations that I think take what we got last year and let you utilize it a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And there's just low hanging fruit there. But in general, it's kind of funny that there has been so much discussion about the iPad as like, I'm not sure the purpose of it, when simultaneously we just got everything we've ever wanted with it. And now it's almost like there's like nothing left to pine for. So people are like, oh, okay, I'm satisfied now, but that's not nearly as
it's a fun
discussion.
It's like, the iPad is what it is. It's slowly getting better and better, slowly, and people want everything now. They want audio hijack to be capable on iPad and stuff like that. I get it.
Yeah, those ones are long overdue, but
I don't know. At the same time, I spent $2,000 on my iPad setup, and it's like, I'm gonna make it work. And I actually enjoy I enjoy all the things, and it's not like a big like struggle for me to like figure out how to do stuff because that's just how my mind works, whatever. But like, if I owned a Mac, a modern Mac, and a modern iPad, use whatever tool seems best for that current job. But it seems like there's a lot of people out there that probably just would only buy one or the other.
I think it goes back to like, I mean, maybe there was a bit during I don't know if the pandemic era has anything to do with it, but like the iPad is the future of not being at your desk 24/7. And maybe some of what people need right now is to be at their desk 24/7. And that's okay for that. But also there is this whole other world of computing where we're not just in our rooms the whole time. And so like maybe Vision Pro is executing on that too, but like all of the above, I think there's always a place for it. And for an iPad to be both is always great. Like I take my iPad and I'll watch a movie and I'll do work on it. I don't want to use my laptop to do those personal things. And so I think having that blend of a computer is always going to have an awesome place.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, shortcuts was always the reason I loved the iPad. And then I got it on the Mac and I was like, great. And now I can do everything anywhere. And I think a lot of people, I mean, I don't know, but if you didn't dive into that whole workflow, you might not reap those benefits like people like us have. So,
yeah. And for me, the external display support, and especially with Stage Manager being so good now, as far as not being overly controlling about its opinions, it does feel like when I dock into this display that I got a little, simplified version of the Mac with all the. I prefer the apps that I like are on my iPad. Like there was no Ferrite for Mac. I don't want to use Logic.
That's the one awesome one for podcasters.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot of apps. Audio Hijack would be cool to have. But I'm happy with my ecosystem of apps I have now, and I'm sure there's apps I'd love on the Mac, but I just don't have access to that right now.
No.
So, this past year, how has your kind of coverage of shortcuts evolved? I know you have a new membership podcast, which is pretty great. You've done, is it just the one episode for now? And you're working on the second one?
I'm recording. I just finished prepping for the second one, which is going to be a long one, but definitely that's been a change. I just want to like give people context like this. It's like I'm jealous when you get to spend 2 hours talking about all these updates. So just kind of doing that more regularly. I'm trying to keep up link blogging too, because I used to do everything in my newsletter, and I struggled over time with it seemed like I was never publishing on my website because I'd saved all these good stories every week. So I switched to now like link blogging all of them. And so I've been doing tons of little posts, but it's pretty easy to miss. So then again, the newsletter is like just the roundup, pretty much the same material, but now it's actually on the web and hopefully giving people more access to that stuff.
Very cool.
So yeah. Just part of that is that Apple has also been publishing change logs for shortcuts for the last year, which has been really nice. Very convenient for a show like this, I'm not going to lie, but also just in general, because they're... I love it because...
You don't need to look at Reddit and dive into all the updates and make sure there's something
actually...
you missed.
That all comes out afterwards, so we still do have to do that. But they detail like every little fix, which is nice. So things that I would just never notice of like this bug was resolved or whatever. But also we can hold their feet to the fire and say, you fixed this 6 months ago and now it's broken again. Why isn't this fixed still? And things like that. So there's definitely a long history of bugs with shortcuts that are still probably unresolved. So if you have any current bugs out there and you're a shortcuts user, file them again, and we can start being like, why isn't this fixed yet?
So since we spoke last a year with Shortcuts 6, I'm curious, were there any mid-year updates to Shortcuts with new actions or anything exciting like that?
Yeah, so that was one of the big in the release notes for 16.4, I think it was. They added a whole new set just mid-year for fun. I think this is if they're somehow listening to this later, please do this every year because giving us actions is great. But we got actions for the Books app, for Intercom on the HomePod, VPN, AirDrop, the Stage Manager stuff, announce notifications, silence unknown callers, night shift, true tone, always on display. You can shut down, restart, and lock your display on iOS and iPadOS and Mac. And then on Mac, you can also log out, sleep, put the display to sleep. So lots of little functions. But the Books ones I love. I'm all about interacting with the Books app and all the audiobook stuff that I have. They just made it a little bit easier there. But the Intercom one is sweet. You can just have Siri speak anything in your house.
Huh.
You could have it like transcribe your whole podcast and then just, I don't know why you'd want to do it over the intercom, but
You could have an automatic weather announcement every morning at 9 a.m. if you wanted to.
yeah, see, these are the real ones that I got like behind on these and I didn't really put them to the great use where with automations, I was like, can I just have it read out any alert at any time
It says
in my house?
Yeah, it says here on watchOS. What's the deal with? I've always been confused by watchOS. It seems like some stuff runs locally, other stuff not so much.
Yeah.
Does like watchOS will talk to the HomePods? Because I know I can't AirPlay to a HomePod for my watch.
No, I mean that part is intercom is just built into the home features, and it's even on the home app on the watch.
Okay,
so it's
gotcha.
just sending it like an audio signal.
Okay,
it's
I
not
see.
like running it at this year though. You'll be able to do app shortcuts on HomePod, which is a good update. So
Nice.
like in general, the HomePod just hands things back to the phone. But I think the watch is slowly trying to do more and more of the execution of the shortcut. It just kind of depends on the steps, I think.
Nice. And I like the VPN one because you get like a focus mode that you use a VPN at work and it automatically connects while you're on your work focus. That seems like a smart, way to
Totally.
use it, right?
I think what's hard about this whole set of actions is like I can't really like make sexy demos. It's just
Yes.
like just use it. Like if you need it, use it. If not, don't. But I think some of them are more like announce notifications is a fun one. So it's like during work mode, Siri can read out your notifications over your headphones, but not during
I have to
personal
say,
mode or something.
I really love I use that for iMessages where the AirPods will read off what's coming in, and that's super handy to me.
Yeah, I use it. I feel like I've said this before, maybe not on the show, but I use it for my membership program, and it is pretty awesome for Siri to be like, "Hey, you just got paid." I'm like, "Sweet."
That's a fun one to get.
So if anyone wants to help me test that out,
And then
Feel free to
the
sign
Stage Manager currently this new action we got mid-year enables or disables, which is very cool. So because you could have a focus mode that with I'm in this focus mode, I'm in this kind of mode where I want Stage Manager on, and otherwise turn it off.
and there's also toggles on that action for the dock in the recent apps, so you can kind of
very
have. I made like options where it's like one, it's like I just want the dock. One, I want just the side
Yeah.
thing. Clear it off, put on both. I think what I struggled with is I just want more advanced actions to place windows in those stages.
I want to be able to
You can't
set up
really-
like I want a shortcut to like this is my podcasting stage. Hit that, it's set up with the 4 apps I'm using and a different.
Yeah.
That'd be great. But
Yeah, it's like I feel like it's like this is one of those things too where we're like this seems so obvious, and then they just like don't do it for like a year and a
because
half. And
they
we're like,
have
"Come on."
ones for split screen setups.
Yeah,
So they
which
realize this is
will
a thing
do it.
people want.
It will put 2 apps on the stage if you use that and then have Stage Manager activated.
Okay.
So like you can kind of get there, and I
But
think
only 2 apps, yeah.
yeah, or I can't remember if you do 2 and then you
Slide
also
over?
open on slide over and then toggle Stage Manager on, it might put all 3.
Right. Yeah, I'll have to play around with that. But they should really just
yeah.
have this, and they should have different modes where like resize the window to a quarter. I don't know,
Totally.
some way of resizing to take up each a quarter of the screen. or
It's
something
all
like that.
built into the macOS too. So like again, I think it's like it's either coming in the 0.1 or this 0.4 again of iOS 17 or they have to wait a whole nother year. It's like I can see some of these just like not working very well, or a Stage Manager has to be right first before.
Yeah, I could see that being a thing. They're trying to perfect what Stage Manager is before they add actions to it on iPad.
Yeah, but
the display setting with True Tone and Night Shift. The one thing I really want at some point is when I'm editing a photo to turn on the iPad's fancy reference mode, but it seems like that was not included there.
Same feature. I think, doesn't it require a restart?
No, it doesn't require a restart.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I've tried it actually. That restart action I actually do use, and it's kind of nice because it's kind of hard to go in and find, or like to even on an iPad, you can't really just like restart it.
No, I tend to just I go to the settings and shut down. But there is an hour restart.
Any bug issues, you can actually restart the device, which is nice.
That's probably, that's going to be easier than doing whenever they switch to the new way of restarting it, they'll do some kind of like Konami cheat code to restart your devices now.
Yeah, like the up-down volume
thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I always have to, look on a search engine. How do I force restart my iPhone because it's acting up? I can't remember it. It's
totally. And then the one time, thankfully it's never happened to me, but the one time you don't actually have a second device is what I'm always worried about.
Right. Yeah. And the always on display toggle seems cool for the iPhone that has it and stuff.
Yeah,
but,
it's like in settings too. And one thing actually for a lot of these individual features is they're now, I'm assuming this is built using shortcuts, but it's not. They have a settings feature where in Spotlight, if you just search for the word always on display, there'll just be a toggle right there that you can flip, cool. Which is pretty,
yeah, I have no use for this because I use a sleeve. So I don't use a case. From not using my phone, I put it in the sleeve, and that just by default turns off the always on display because it's covered and it's smart enough to know.
My phone just, for whatever reason, every beta has been turning off. It's always on display, and I have to keep turning it back on. And even right now, I have to, so I don't know why. Huh. I bet the other thing I've been trying to figure out, and this is what's probably the case, is that I set up an automation to have it occur at some random time or trigger that I don't know, and so now it's just like once a week it's turning off, and I didn't realize that I just like set it up as a sample automation, but I don't think so. I think it's the betas. That's the most logical explanation.
The last thing on this list is repeat can now be set to run 0 times. What is the point of this one?
I've seen people use that as a way to mark out a section of actions without deleting them, where it'll like skip over them and by repeating 0 times. So like if you don't want to delete part of your flow, you can move it into a repeat loop and repeat 0 times, and then it'll just kind of skip it. It's like a meta thing, but for somebody like if you're like Federico building your screenshots thing and you have 400 steps in the middle of it, you could like do that and like hide it or something. I don't know.
Gotcha.
Some of that is just like probably built for random people like us. But that's why exactly that kind of esoteric bug fix, you'd never know, and then it could present some opportunities. So
right.
I hope they keep documenting every update like this.
Yeah. So let's dive into Shortcuts of version 7, which is out with iOS and iPadOS 17. Are there any like overriding themes or trends with this year's updates, or any opening thoughts before we dive into all the new actions?
It's a big year. Shortcuts is always interesting because it always either seems like nothing happened or it could change everything. Like we got automations are now fully automatic. The Shortcuts widget came to the Mac, which I think is a huge thing because this maybe isn't for the iPad Pros podcast, but it just brings Shortcuts right into the desktop home screen environment for every Mac user and for a lot of people who are trying to get productivity stuff out of their Apple devices can happen on Mac and just with Shortcuts.
So is your 27-inch monitor on the Mac now just filled with shortcut widgets?
Both of them, yes.
Okay.
Both monitors. I went overboard for a minute, and I had to slow down because it just wasn't helping. And of course, I was crashing it again every day. So it just couldn't load it all at once. But yeah, I mean, they simplified a lot of it too. The other thing is, app shortcuts are becoming more prominent in almost like the Shortcuts app is being redesigned to show what is now Spotlight shortcuts. So if you search for a term like day one, it'll show next to it a shortcut to create entry and then to like view your most recent entry.
I've noticed that, yeah. And if I search
like
for app, looking for App Store, the appearance shortcut switching from dark to light mode will show up in Spotlight search where I can just toggle that right within Spotlight.
Yeah,
now.
that's kind of that setting thing. But like every app will be able to provide those app shortcuts. And then in the Shortcuts app, when you go look at the day one section, it'll show you that kind of, it's like a new tile interface with a colorful background and things like that. Mostly
music,
in a way to like make it easier for you to just use any shortcut. Even if you just open the app, you can run it, and it kind of has a more graphical interface than what like normal shortcuts look like.
Yeah. I've noticed music. If I search for music, it'll show my recent albums right there in the top hits to play. I'm not sure if that's shortcut related or not.
It's basically all the donation stuff that they've been doing for years, where you tell the apps tell the system what stuff you're using. Now it can just kind of surface the most common actions.
Yeah.
Or like the top app shortcut that the developer recommends.
Yeah, like right now, I have nothing in the search box, and right under my Siri suggestion apps, I have recents from Photos, which I'm assuming is one of those donations, and often played at this time is play new episodes in Overcast, which looks very much like a shortcut kind of action.
Yeah, those are all. That's more. Those are just kind of the same Siri suggestions stuff they've done for the past years. They've minimized it so you can see more per screen, but then if you like search for the word Overcast, it'll also, I mean, to be fair, he probably hasn't implemented this yet. I would search for like voice memos is the demo they keep using, but like you can record a voice memo straight from Spotlight by tapping that app shortcut. And so
record and play last.
So those are called app shortcuts for Spotlight, and then that tile interface is now like the main interface of shortcuts for third-party apps, past all of your custom shortcuts and stuff, which, to be fair, I never see because I have so many. It's just buried down at the bottom.
Right.
But it's the same thing of last year where app shortcuts enable you to just install something like Overcast and then just say, play whatever station, and it has already provided that shortcut to the system. And then the same thing, you can just search for it, and even before you ever set it up, it's already available and you can use it. So it's kind of like all the way from just using the app to search, like a major thing for years and years, for especially the home screens and shortcuts. Tons of people just tell me, I just search for the app and use it. So going to find the shortcut and run it is like this other roundabout method. And so now it's just right in Spotlight. They always kind of had them, but it was kind of buried. I think now this year they're like, oh, people actually use these, especially if we provide them for them automatically. So now it's kind of, I find it all the time. I'm just searching for my shortcuts and running them, and that's great too.
Right.
And another feature for just custom shortcuts is the ... the edit menu is in Spotlight. So if you search for a shortcut by name, you can edit it right away, which is, that was like made for me because I have so many and I always like searching for them and opening them is what takes me so long just because I have so many. And so like just kind of getting it right to it and editing it is great. I need that in the widget too. That's kind of what does kill me. I know why they don't, but if I could edit any of my shortcuts or edit a folder straight from the widget, I would have so much smoother of a workflow. Because right now I'm always going back to the front of the app and finding my shortcuts again. But yeah, Spotlight stuff I think that's going to be huge. And my Vision Pro teaser is that I think in the future you should be able to look at something like your lampshade and it knows that that's a HomeKit device. And then the app shortcuts pop out to the side and you can just look at them and run the shortcut. So that's my they've built shortcuts into the ecosystem now where you can run it from anywhere and it's truly interactive from anywhere. And so that means it slowly can be divorced from the app itself and just a function.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. I do wonder, the camera, it's for you to see what's going on around you. I don't know if and Apple's scanning it for like make sure you don't hit your foot and stuff and all that. I don't know if it's analyzing what's in your room and has any way
it
to...
It definitely is.
Yeah,
it's all AR. That's all the AR kit stuff they've been doing for years and years, is identifying the objects.
Okay.
I mean, really what you do is probably assign that lamp to a shortcut kind of thing. And then it just knows because
you can assign windows to live at a certain spot in each room you're in, and it will remember that. So,
but it also is like if it's giving off a signal or something like that too.
Yeah,
this is where I believe in Apple's ability to execute in ways that I can't even fathom right now. It's like they don't have that limitation. They have like whatever they have such.
Yeah, they need to.
Obviously, they have like reality of limitation, but like just versus where we are with the OS right now is like they can figure that out.
Yeah, I wonder too if they'll start putting that AirTag chip inside HomeKit accessories as a official third-party licensed thing to work better with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know about third parties, but definitely all the HomePods have U1s in them right now. So that's kind of why they've been. I'm like, it seems. It's one of those things where it seems obvious to me, but not other people, and that's like a sign that they're probably going to do it because it just is like laying the chips. They do this where they've like like what will they do with U1, and now it's 4 years later, and they're like, by the way, boom, here it is. Like or sometimes they haven't thought of it, and that's why we need to share our ideas with them because it's all brand new.
Yeah. So let's get to the actions in Shortcut 7. One batch of actions they added after the initial betas came out are these new camera modes that you can launch right into cinematic mode, take a panorama. This seems pretty neat. So you could have a photography kind of focus mode and have all these different options on your lock screen or home screen, and that seems pretty nice. The one thing I do want, I'm not sure if it's an option at all, is launch my camera into Pro RAW capture or live photo capture for just standard photos. Is that a thing at all?
It is not.
Okay.
This is, of course, where we're like, great, now do the next part. Like,
right.
You guys did it, but we all want actual controls, not just the start. So my theory or my heart is going off of that this is the first step and that they'll add more parameters to this action later. That's just like change the mode for it.
Right, and with video, how cool could be if you could set the video resolution, frame rate, all that stuff. That can change drastically depending on what you were wanting to shoot.
Again, it's like why did this not? I don't understand.
But
I think it's I almost just imagine an organization, the major corporation, being like, we'll release this version first, and then the second version do more, rather than just doing it well the first time. But it takes time, and it is. I mean, I can still appreciate this too. It will set up some more situations for people, and I think people will have to. Again, we have to demand that we need those features. Like, this is good, but this isn't enough. Is always worth saying, because they might think it's enough, and there's always that blend of shortcuts being for the average person versus pros like us.
Yeah, the quality thing is what I care more about hot swapping, because that seems hard. Yeah. It's harder for me to do that sometimes. It's just like the video resolution. Obvious. You have to go in settings app and all that.
Yeah, it's like you need anybody who wants to use the video controls. Like, the first thing people ask me when they get shortcuts is like, "Oh, can I control the video camera stuff?" Like, still can't, and it's been like 4 years since some of those people
is there a setting URL where you can jump right into the settings app and pick that stuff
page?
out?
Yes, there is, and I do have a shortcut.
Okay.
But again, it's like now
right.
I'd rather just do it all at once.
No, I get it.
That's like not the same.
And then they added as well stuff for the NFC chip for like when you tap Apple, wallet or Pass. I think it's just transactions, regardless of whether you physically use it. So if you just pay on your phone too. Oh, okay.
Like online, I haven't actually tried that. Now that I think about it, I only did the wallet thing.
Yeah.
Which was it? You were the one who was like, "It's finally working, right?" Or
no, I've not tested this either.
Someone's been like, "Oh, I'm fine." Oh yeah, no way. It's a Matt Corey who's making the Home Pass thing, and he's like, "I keep going to the store and buying stuff, and then it doesn't work." But yeah, so what's weird is this is in typical Apple fashion. The first version of the transaction automation had 4 different types for ID cards and travel passes. Like I take BART in the Bay Area, and then now that's all gone, and it's only just straight transactions.
Huh.
I think we'll get it back in iOS 17.1 because like they haven't really released the identity stuff publicly, so like it sometimes it is kind of like a teaser for upcoming features, but just in general with transactions, anytime you make a purchase, it can just pass the data out.
With the transit one, you could hypothetically tie into, if you have, say, $100 transit pass, you could have the shortcut where every time you tap it, it like in a spreadsheet updates how much money is left on that card, so you don't have to like...
Totally.
I don't know. I'm not sure if the pass is actually on Apple Wallet will actually say how much is left. I have not used one of those in a while.
Yeah, I mean, mine shows its own amount, but I don't know if it might be able to do that with one of the things with all these actions is that they have variables in them, so you can get the transaction details. So that rather than just the transit thing, just like you can log any of your daily purchases to a spreadsheet. I mean, ironically, the add to numbers action doesn't work. It has to open the numbers app. And so again, why? Yeah. Why did they add this 2 years ago? Now we have transaction automations and still this feature has to open the app. Like you can't log this to Apple's built-in spreadsheet tool. So you have to find a third party, which is fine for third-party apps, but also for a normal person is like, this is dumb. I want to use numbers.
Yeah.
So again, I feel like I'm verbally filing feedback. Second piece there is that you should be able to do that. But for people who, like any business person, business expenses, you can automatically track right now, which is awesome. So using QuickBooks or something like that.
And then external displays. So if your iPad connects to a monitor, say my Sony InZone M9 in front of me, I can trigger something to happen, or when it disconnects, I can trigger something else to happen. And I learned, based on your write-up, I thought I was going to suggest this to Apple, but they already did this. If you have different branded monitors, it can behave differently for the different monitor. So say if you have a Sony gaming monitor and say an Apple monitor in a different room, it can behave differently and like put it in a different focus mode if you're on the Sony one versus the Apple one or whatnot.
Yep, exactly. It just uses the name of the device. So
if you have two of the exact same monitor, it won't know what's going on. Just think it's
mine, I have 2 LG HDs and they just do 1 and 2 afterwards. So it should work.
But you could also they are named differently. Okay.
Yeah, you could also like include logic if you want to do the same 2 monitors. You can just like if it contains or something like that. So yeah, those are like great too, but I still haven't like I have a monitor in the other room and I was trying to use that for the iPad, but I just found that like I was trying to force this setup that I didn't actually care about.
Yeah.
And I think what's funny too is the 12.9 iPad fits just perfectly, so it doesn't feel very nice underneath a display at like its built-in height. It like touches the top of the bottom of the monitor.
See, this is why you need a hover bar Duo, and it sits right next to your big monitor.
I have a stand that I keep mine up, but I don't like it fully mounted because I actually take it out and use
you like to touch it and stuff. Gotcha.
Yeah. So like I'm not like a full iPad desk setup person as much.
Right.
Because I mean, partially I'm always trying to stream and stuff. So
and you've got the Mac for the desk setup, so you already have that solution.
Yeah, I go for all types of setups. So I think that's where I probably will find a use for this. But I think it's the same thing where sometimes during the beta season, I really try hard to like make this happen, and I don't care. Like this feature just came out doesn't mean now I have a use for it. I don't, and sometimes that's really, I try to like, I don't know, even Apple as an inspiration is like, just because you have the technology doesn't mean I need to use it. Like it's built off of my needs first. And that's one thing that I'm super guilty of with shortcuts is just making a shortcut because I can, not because I actually do need that. So I think these same things I was trying to take advantage of, but didn't really have one. The thing that would have made immediate sense to me is Stage Manager, but it already turns itself off. It's like it's built into the display.
Yeah,
so
you can't
when
use
you're using
actual
it's already
display
on.
with split screen. It has to be Stage Manager.
Yeah, so that's where like I mean, you can think of like a specific use case where it's like now it unplugs and it goes to bright mode, or just like some of these again are like nice.
Oh yeah, that is an idea.
But I don't know
when you plug in the display. If you're trying to use your iPad in like a fake clamshell mode, turn the display brightness all the way down, and then when you unplug it again, brighten it all the way back up.
Yeah, I mean the thing I found with the Stage Manager one that I tried to make work was when I turn off Stage Manager, open my slide over apps, because in theory it broke down all of my slide over setup, and so but then I just found anytime I'm just like, oh, I don't want to use Stage Manager anymore, and then suddenly 6 apps open, and I'm like, what is happening? So
it's kind of interesting
where, like the balance between like true automation and just like, oh, when this occurs, I might want this to happen, is like, I think that is something I'll need to balance now because we actually have true automation, and so like the confirmation automations. Before it was always like way too much mental work for me because everyone was constantly like trying to notify me, and then I didn't really know what it was doing. And some of I can get to this later too, but some of the automation stuff changed, and so like I think now those ones that actually pop up, I might actually see them and process them and use them, whereas the other ones are just going off in the background.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Mid-year we had Stage Manager, the ability to turn it on or off, and then now we have the ability, once it's turned on or off, to do something. So you could like use those two in conjunction, you know.
Yeah, but again, we can't open the apps in the way that we want.
Exactly.
So
the thing
if
we
I
actually
could turn
want.
it on, this is exactly it. Both of these actions, 100%, I will use them when I can turn on Display Manager, or it's like when I'm connected to an external display, move my 4 windows over and set them up. I'll use it in a heartbeat. Until then, there's like toggle settings, maybe, I don't know, or like start time tracking, like, But I think that's, again, it's a perfect example. Always some stuff in shortcuts doesn't make sense, and then 6 months later, you're like, oh, okay, now I'm going to use that.
So you mentioned this just a minute ago. We now have true automations. So instead, we have the run immediately for automations where you don't need to confirm with a dialogue thing, and this is great. So are there any caveats here? Does everything work this way, or?
So location ones were broken for a bit and now are working again. My first caveat is test this. Good God, test this, because the reason they didn't do this is it's going to just happen. And so
You'll send
if you are at a location and you come back, it'll go off again. And so I think they really didn't want to like leave this on people, but now it's like good, like you have it and it's your responsibility to make sure you don't do things. So like that Stage Manager one was a good example of just like, there's going to be stuff happening and you're not going to know why. And it's going to be weird, but you like also though, I think this is why I think this is a big year for shortcuts is so many people come in, they're like automations and then it doesn't work automatically, and they're like, I'm never going to use this again. That was stupid. So like now it actually works when you say it. And they just changed the frickin' language. So it used to be don't ask before running ? It was a double negative. And like when I saw run immediately, I was like, man, they must have had a copywriting session where like my words were like printed out, like making fun of them was like printed out because it did not make sense before. And now it's like, oh yeah, automations are automatic. What a concept. But it's good because I think in the same thing going back, I haven't been able to really use it the way that I would my brain can think of in any moment because suddenly you're limited by X, Y, or Z. I think they do need to add some more like duplicate suppression. They did this for Wi-Fi, but they didn't add it for Bluetooth or location. And I think there should be toggles that's like only run this once every 6 hours or something like that. Because, and the same thing with Bluetooth, if my AirPods connect using, what's it called? Not universal control, but
the Passover.
Just a little. What?
The thing where it, not Passover,
that's
but
isn't that a
it's a Jewish
religion?
What's it called? Automatic switching, where it passes.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of like passing audio
thing.
from one device to another. It's like it's the Passover technology.
Passover, I love it.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Probably not. No. I'm not on Apple's.
But but it's like if something on my Mac starts playing audio, it will. I mean, not Mac. That's a bad example. But if I'm using my phone and my iPad starts playing audio, that automation will immediately run before I even actually connect it. So I think that like having more granularity in those Bluetooth controls is going to be necessary because people are going to want to use it.
Yeah,
that one's like a pretty good one. But then if it just automatically does it every time, it's kind of like, or without you really knowing what's going on. So
the most annoying thing that AirPods do to me is I must say that the device switching is much better with 17. But if you're using your Apple Watch to listen to something and you're out of iPhone range from Bluetooth, and then you re-enter iPhone range Bluetooth, it'll stop playing audio and connect to your iPhone because, of course, that's what you want to be connected to, even if you're in the middle of listening to something else. That's the most annoying.
I don't usually use the watch itself. I think because my AirPods rarely would connect in time, and so I more like use the watch to control what the phone is playing.
Yeah, I often leave the phone behind, and I'm just have my watch out doing walks or whatever.
Oh yeah, nice. I always want to do that, but then I'm like, oh, I want to take a picture. Oh
yeah. No, I get it. I often am walking with someone that has a phone with I'll just like borrow that one.
This episode is sponsored by Agenda. Agenda 18.1 is now out and available with support for interactive widgets in iPadOS 17 and iOS 17, and now supports advanced data protection for those using that with iCloud. As this episode is all about shortcuts, I want to share just how incredible Agenda's shortcut support is in this quick break. Agenda has incredibly rich shortcut support, being an awesome citizen of Apple's platforms. One of my favorite actions is the ability to change the Agenda focus filter based on your current focus mode. So when you are in work focus mode, you can now, with shortcuts background automations, have Agenda only show you the categories you want displayed while at work, and vice versa for personal focus mode and all the other focus modes you may have set up. Another very powerful action is the ability to append to a note or create a new note in whatever project you want to set it to. This could even be set up to work with the new Action button on the iPhone 15 Pro to click that button to append or create a new note with text or even images in an Agenda note. Another pretty powerful action is the Find Notes action, which can have tons of different filters and search criteria to allow you to really pull up a custom view of just the notes you need for that instance. These are just some of the many actions available through the Shortcuts app for Agenda. I encourage you to dive into Shortcuts to explore how Agenda can be automated to best suit your needs. If you haven't tried Agenda, I'd really encourage you to give it a try. Agenda is free to download and use with no obtrusive ads. To unlock the full power of Agenda, give Agenda Premium a try. One thing that Agenda continues to do that I love is their approach to premium features and unlocks. If you ever decide to cancel your Agenda Premium subscription, you get to keep all of the Agenda Premium features available when you were last a subscriber. Or you can now opt for their new lifetime unlock, which will unlock the full power of Agenda on all your Apple devices with a single one-time purchase. To learn more, go to agenda.com. Download Agenda 18 today for free from the App Store. My thanks again to Agenda for sponsoring this episode of iPad Pros. Learn more at www.agenda.com.
So the Books app got some shortcuts last year, as you mentioned, and some new ones as well this year. Anything in here that you are using?
Not particularly. I think the Books app, it more just like got me into what we got last year, which is just using the current, like you can open the current book or the audiobooks ones, which are fun. So
yeah,
I've been listening to that.
Yeah, you use Apple audiobooks versus
Silent?
Audible.
Yeah, I'm just a sucker for Apple stuff. So
I know I am too. Yeah,
we're on the iPad Pros.
Yes,
podcast,
iTunes movie library is probably over 1,000 at this point. But like Audible, it's funny, and I don't use Kindle. I use Apple Books because I prefer that app. But for whatever reason, that Audible subscription just too good to pass up versus the price.
Yeah,
of
they
audiobooks.
just it's always available. But
yeah,
they definitely need to improve the audiobooks thing. Like, I do love the shortcuts, and they had a widget too, so I'm totally a sucker for that.
Yeah.
The Find Books thing just lets you search through your library and kind of show different results. So I think this would be most useful if you had a lot of PDFs.
Yeah.
Because you could kind of like actually access those like a file system rather than the other Books app actions are more just like open my most recent book or something.
Gotcha. And then Stopwatch. You could basically, is it right? You could basically build your own stopwatch within a shortcut app, little pop-up menu almost.
Yeah, these ones are pretty basic. I think I was looking at what you were suggesting. I don't think you might be able to do time tracking through the timers. The stopwatch one doesn't provide data as output.
Yeah, my suggestion was, could you read the stopwatch and kind of like send that to some app somehow?
Yeah, no, that would be good. It's pretty interesting. They just added like start stopwatch, reset, lap, do those basic things.
Yeah.
I think some of these were geared more towards the Apple Watch and like being able to have functions on any screen.
Right.
It's just kind of like nice. Like you could automate these. You can combine them with anything else, like kick off a thing. So I think I'm going to have, I can tell that I have to have like a retreat in the woods session and really go to like, or maybe it's just find some coach who times people.
Yes.
And he's like, oh man, I'd love to have a stopwatch to do this, and this.
Because imagine you could have it, it could pick from a list of all your student athletes, start a stopwatch, but you can't name these things, can you? Because that'd be cool if you could have different stopwatches that are named.
I feel like timers, you're getting close, like it's all essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
I know, but timers count down.
Timers count down. So you need a counting up timer that you can name, also known as a stopwatch. But imagine that if you're a coach, you have 10, 15 stopwatches going that are, named different people.
Yeah, that's fair. I think building out the stopwatch app for coaches is not Apple's priority.
No, I'm sure there's some great, amazing stopwatch app for coaches out there. That's got to exist.
That's why. I'm using
that now.
Toggle for time tracking, and that's fantastic.
Right.
I don't know about simultaneous timers. But.
My favorite thing about the stopwatch is opening it like a week later after I forgot I started running it.
Yeah.
It happens at least a couple times a year. It's like,
I think I saw.
Yeah.
I think Mark Settle, who's a English journalist, had a timer that was running so long it overflowed out of the visible decimals on the screen, and he set up a video with him and his kids when it finally went over, and they're like, oh, and then they're like, oh, that wasn't that exciting, but so the multiple timers one, I think it seems like the timers team gave us everything that you want for stopwatches, but you can start and stop and get the data out too, which is huge.
A little side tangent with timers. I'm very disappointed in the Apple Watch timer team. For a single year, we had the ability to favorite a time for the timer. And they took that out. Now it's just a list of kind of the recent timers. And it's super buggy. If I use like the complication to get back into the timer, often it'll display the full time before it started. We're on beta 8 as we record. Timers on watchOS is still very buggy in this new version.
I haven't had that much issue, but
I use them.
The whole
heavily.
multiple timers, with shortcuts now, if you just press start timer 3 times in a row, it will start 3 separate timers.
I discovered that. That was fun.
It's interesting. I mean, and what's weird is then the get current info timer is like a waterfall down from the most recent timer. So like you can only ever get like the next timer information, but you can't. It's still pretty nice. You can. One thing that I always hate about timers is you're like, when did I start this? Like I stopped at 15 minutes into it, or like 13 minutes, and it's a 28-minute timer. When did I start it?
Yeah.
Like doing that date math, your brain is just like, give me a second, hold on. So like some of that with shortcuts now you could automate, or if you're big into timers for cooking.
Then the scrolling up thing with the widgets on the Apple Watch, that timer is rock solid. The actual app is not, but the data in when you scroll up is there. And I just tested. You can have a bunch of timers all running in that widget area all at once.
I'm just seeing there's a shortcut thing in there that wasn't in there earlier. In the dock, it's showing me no shortcut, but
I wonder if that's created for the watch in particular or something.
Hold on, let me test this real quick. Ooh, I can put a shortcut. Ooh, I can fill up my dock with shortcuts now for no reason. Just have scroll up on the... Ooh, we just discovered a feature in real time. Sweet. This wasn't there earlier. Also, I mean, I didn't have my shortcuts syncing on the watch for 6 weeks, and it turns out that you have to go click on iCloud and sign into iCloud on your watch now, which I don't remember if that was ever a feature before, but it was just like, I'm like, oh, this is so dumb, it's a bug. It's like, no, I'm just not signed in.
I will say, too, it appears you can have unlimited timers running on your watch, and they all show up in the little widget section, which has a hard cap on how many widgets you can put in there, but it does not seem to have a cap on your timers. So you can have this endlessly scrolling list of timers on your watch.
They have 10 shortcuts, endless timers. We should see how many you can get. In case people didn't know, you can have like 45 or more Apple Watch faces, which I figured out at one point. It just keeps going. I don't know if there's a limit. I mean, I'm sure there is, but...
I mean, I have a good 20 timers running on my watch now that I don't know if that's going to be annoying pretty soon.
Yeah, halfway through this episode, it's going to go off.
Yeah, my watches, they clearly mute. But that is the thing. So what's the shortcuts thing on the watch within the widgets area?
Just in that new, when you scroll up using the digital crown, it'll show like those select widgets. And I just saw that it was suggesting a shortcut to me. So you can pin a single shortcut in there.
Oh, very
just
cool.
Keep it accessible. So that's great. Yeah, I love that. In general, the Shortcuts Watch app, I think, got a lot of love this year. I think maybe related to some of those sync bugs, and just like the interface doesn't load all of the shortcuts at once. There's a see all option, which I feel like, again, I had 200 loading, and so it would just crash immediately every time. But app shortcuts show up on the watch now too. So those same like 3 voice memos ones will have their own little category on the watch. So you can't, it seems like the watch is like growing up a lot this year with, I actually really like the changes with the gestures and the interaction design. It's like a little awkward at first and kind of kills your muscle memory, but also I think last year at one point I tweeted it, I was like, I forgot about the side button on the watch, like that dock button or whatever it did before. I don't think I pressed that for an entire year, and it's just like nothing to me. I don't know why. Yeah, see, some people are some people are like, I use it all the time. I'm like, I forgot it was there. I think the way they changed it totally makes sense. It's just like easier to understand. It gives you access to those widgets. And I think it's just kind of like, you could really get lost on the watch before. And I think now, like the honeycomb is like a scrolling honeycomb.
I love the new honeycomb. I never used the honeycomb before because I always got lost in going sideways and up and down.
I had to spend like an hour or two sorting it, and then I liked it, but it's still...
because I was a list mode person, hardcore, and then they fixed the honeycomb for me. It's like, oh, this is the way now. Yeah.
But yeah, watches just kind of chugging along. Honestly, the same thing. I've had so many sync issues with the watch that I really haven't been able to almost ever really run shortcuts from it since it came back.
Yeah.
So I think now I'm kind of like getting back into it for the first time. I think the big thing though is they're pretty clearly going to put an action button on the new iPhone, or supposedly that's the new thing. I think that's a little funny because I personally, well, one thing is the bugs meant I couldn't use it a whole lot. It also failed. I tried to make a shortcut that, depending on the time of day, would do something different, and it just couldn't execute the shortcut. So like that was just like the watch can't do it. The
Is
phone's
that
never
improved
gonna have that
with
problem.
This latest version?
I haven't been able to test it on this most recent one. Like I literally got my watch to sync on Sunday. So
okay, gotcha.
It's been kind of brutal. But I think too, like the interface for picking an action just lets you select one single shortcut forever. And I think that, I mean, it presents the opportunity for someone like me to make a shortcut that changes function depending on the time of day. But I think they need to do more than just like let me run one shortcut. It's like a shortcut per day, or like a whole scheduling system, or I don't know. Like
I'd imagine
focus modes.
I'd imagine when in this focus mode, the action does this. When in that focus mode, it does that. I'd imagine that's possible.
I thought of this. The way they could do this is they make a shortcut action that says set the action button to a shortcut, and then I can use get my shortcuts, pick a shortcut or whatever, and then set it, and then it'll change, and I can automate it, and then they don't even need an interface for it either. So feedback number 3, let's file that to them. Yeah, I guess it'll come out afterwards, but still.
I will say I'm very excited for the third-party watch apps because I got my first beta with OmniFocus has their beta that has a widget for watchOS 10. It's like, oh, this is great. I'm gonna want, like, I'm out of widget space. I want more space for more widgets on watchOS, and I know it's gonna be.
Do you mean the new lower widgets?
Yes.
Thing?
Or where you scroll up. Yeah.
Let's do more real time. I want that, and I just switched to OmniFocus. So, how do you? They have one that just shows like your forecast. Is that what?
Yeah, they have a forecast one. They have another one as well, I believe.
I want to set this up because I'm really digging OmniFocus. I honestly like prefer things, but OmniFocus is what I need for being me.
Yes,
and the kind of person that I am. So. Do you use the forecast one or like the numbers?
I've been using.
Do you actually show the tasks?
Yeah.
Wait, just like the number one, the graphical. Oh, I have too many pinned. That's why. Yeah. See, now I have 99 tasks.
There's a very short limit. Like I can have 1,000 timers running, but only like I don't know 8 widgets or whatever. Yeah.
Well, that'll be another feature they have to change just for us.
Yes. So, back to shortcuts. We sometimes do tangents, which is all right. You can now there's a scan documents action, which I could have sworn this is new. I mean,
I think did we have a scan? We might have had some sort of scan function. This uses like the actual proper scanning thing. I mean, we've always had the camera one.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's
but no scanning before. Yeah, this is cool.
But what's weird about this is I was testing this. It saves it to wherever you have the Files app open. So it doesn't.
You can't set it.
It doesn't.
You can't set it.
Yeah,
in the action.
Because like technically, if you use the scanner in Files, it is just like activating the scanner.
Yeah.
It's not like for a specific spot. So I was like making a whole shortcut to open in a file. Yeah.
So you need to first have an action that tells it to open X folder, then do scan.
And then it needs to get the contents of that folder and then get the latest item. And then also, of course, in the current betas, the filter files actions are just broken on iPad and Mac. Have been for the last 2 betas. Just can't filter files right now. That's fun. Jason Snell was annoyed at that and was messaging me, and I'm like, oh, maybe they'll fix it. No, they haven't fixed it. But, so yeah, that one's also weird. I feel like that should have an option to let you save it to a specific file or even pass the file out as output. It just literally opens the file scanner thing and then saves it to whichever folder is currently open. So yeah, kind of weird, but you can get around it.
Yeah.
I think optimizations are probably needed, but it does let you scan multiple files.
Okay. And then the fitness app, we can now end workouts, and there's actions for those mirrored workouts with cycling. I will probably never use.
Those disappeared now too.
Oh,
so same thing, probably coming later. You can end a workout too.
I don't get this. Like, your watch is on your wrist. Just hit the end button. I don't understand this at all.
Siri or like just as part of a flow, it could like stop it and do other things.
Okay. Okay, sure.
And you could put it on the watch face. I don't know. I agree. I think it's more like before you could start a workout, but you couldn't stop it. So it probably was like somebody. I mean, one of the most obvious answers for everything with shortcuts is for accessibility, and for something like that too. So the accessibility features the action button could end a workout too and stuff like that. So,
and then the Freeform app, there's an action for opening a board and creating new boards. This seems very handy for those that do use this app. For say you're in a meeting and you can have this action that sets up Freeform the way you need it to be and all that.
I wish it let you title the new document. That was one of the like it'll just create a blank one. I'm using this because I do like reference when I create a video. I'll create a board and reference it over time. So for me, it's more like it's like pretty simple, not anything fancy. But I'd rather have these than not have access to it and then can't open those documents. So I think too like these are pretty clearly for Vision Pro. Like, Vision Freeform is built for that platform, and so just being able to call up a document with your voice is going to be important in a hands-free environment. Yeah,
I'm so curious how working within Freeform on Vision Pro will be. There's no drawing or anything, which is great on iPad. I'm curious what that experience will be like.
Yeah. This next one is also gone.
The mail app one's gone?
Yeah.
Okay,
they had to find mail.
So there used to be an action for finding a message. Which mail, that's the one thing, like, people in my life are like, why can't you find this email? I can do it in 2 seconds in Gmail. It's like, I'm sorry, Apple Mail is just terrible.
That's what's funny is I would assume this action's mail is already notoriously bad at searching. So this action, to make it work well, I think some of these are like we maybe got teasers of stuff to come or it requires more optimization. The one thing with mail is mail automations are automatic now. So you can, when I receive an email from my boss, do this sort of thing. Just say I quit every time. No, but and same with messages. So,
but that's kind of neat because like you could have your boss have an automation where if you have a boss that wants you to reply right away, you could have some kind of like alert that's different from VIP. Your boss doesn't need to be in VIP anymore. It can instead be this like action that, your lights flash red and give you a attack.
Like even just like push cut or something on another device, like you could have your work computer notify you of important messages or something on your phone. So there's definitely really cool stuff. And the find mail will be huge once we get it. I think the question is whether they'll enable the deep links that you can get from dragging mail out right now, but there's otherwise no way to copy a link.
Yes, or the Siri remind me of this email thing.
Yeah, well, those aren't even... Those probably use the same linking system, but they don't provide the link anywhere. That's one thing that I hate about reminders is you can use remind me about this, but you can't get that data out of shortcuts. So any of those links are like kind of just invisible. But yeah, so again, I think they kind of like, maybe these actions just didn't work well, and then they kind of locked the betas pretty early,
right,
just to make sure it works.
So Photos has these collections, like 1 year ago, recents, favorites, and places. You can now open those with Actions. Have you found a way to create your own collections?
Nope. And
Okay.
again, I always love these because, Tim, you are always right on the ball in the same spot with me. Is you're like, man, that would be great if I could make my own, or why can't I search and find more? Again, I don't know what's happening here.
Yeah, with the places, I'd love to have instead of just places, I'd like to have, all of the different places as options. I don't know if that's a thing where it's like my home address, have that be a certain action versus just generic places.
Yeah, within the radius kind of thing. I think, again, the same thing. I almost, it's like, I hate repeating this because that's always when it's, especially on an iPad podcast, when we always are like, oh, we'll get it next year. But they really are like setting up for what could be awesome shortcuts, but they just have like the front end of it right now, and then like this, you can't even open a photo album right now. So the fact that this action should let you search for an album and open it, or like, what's the distinction between a collection and an album? They've made one here, but there really isn't one. So these should, again, this should be updated as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these, it's like, I always like to think of it as this is the Photos team adding actions for the first time rather than the Shortcuts team. And they need to start with the basics and then go on. And all of the other media actions that we have were built by the workflow team when I worked there before it was even Apple. So they need the APIs that the developers have now too to make third-party actions. Apple's own internal teams also need those advanced functions to be able to do stuff like this. So I hope this Photos, like, again, it's like, it's like so obvious to a Shortcuts user. You're like, why can't I do this next thing? and they're like, we're getting there, sort of thing.
Yeah, Photos, so much potential there for what you could do there. Cellular Data can now be automated to set up a hotspot password, resetting your data stats, toggling cellular plans if you have multiples, finding cellular plans to get set up with a new one, and setting the default plan. I just thought how cool it would be to have Shortcuts generate a random, hard to guess password automatically, and like send it out, to your significant other, maybe over some kind of iMessage thing. And every time you set up your hotspot, just randomly create a new password so it's more secure or something like that.
Yeah, totally. I think a lot of these they built off of, they did some other phone stuff last year. And I think for people who need this, it's super popular because you're always on your hotspot, or you're like on a different cellular plan. And depending on that, sometimes you have different data depending on which plan it is, or like a work phone. So these are super useful.
Yeah, you could have the background automatic thing set up for when you're in work focus mode, use this cellular plan. When you're not, switch over automatically, to a different cellular plan.
Totally. I think for anyone who has a phone, the one that I think should just be a feature is resetting data stats. This is the thing that never made sense to me, and is the stupidest thing about the phone, is it shows you your current cellular usage since the last time you reset your data, and you can't see how much data have I used this month. It's like very straightforward, like, when does my plan restart? Show me how much data I've used since then. It just always adds up and up. And I always get the best taste of this every single beta season is it inevitably downloads some update while I'm on cellular and uses my entire cellular plan in like one afternoon. But so the automation that I think everybody should set up is either at the first of the month or like the 7th when your plan goes through, have a time automation for 12 a.m. to reset your cellular data stats so that you know every month how much you're actually using. And you could log it right before.
Who's your cellular provider?
Verizon.
You might hate me for telling you this, but on T-Mobile, it gives me usage, and it says last update by T-Mobile at this time, billing cycle ends September 29th, yada, yada, yada. And it's only at 2 gigs, so I have to believe that's automatically doing this for T-Mobile. And if I scroll down, it says cellular data this billing period and has it by apps and sort by usage or a name. And then there's a button for last billing period.
Maybe it is just Verizon is dumb.
Do you have that button when you scroll down for the app list? Does it have a toggle for this and last billing period?
I have current period, apps by usage, and then that's it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, on T-Mobile, there's a this billing period and last billing period. So it is a very rare.
See, okay, well then if you're on Verizon,
that is wild.
You need to do this. Yeah, because it's literally just like not useful otherwise.
Even on the Apple Watch, it just says it's current period. So that's probably more similar to how the Verizon's acting and probably doesn't reset that often.
Yeah, this is a good one just for, because it's like I never know what's happening, and then it's like some random thing down at the bottom is sucking up a ton of data, but you just don't notice. So.
Yeah, that is fascinating how different carriers, like, it's very detailed what stuff is in here. Like, it's pretty cool. But yeah, I guess T-Mobile did good with this, how they integrated here. Are you on an eSIM or? I guess you have
I
to,
think
right?
so.
Yeah.
I think they just kind of switched it when I went out.
So next up, another thing I could have sworn we could have done before is printing from shortcuts. Is this really the first time?
Crazy.
Is this really the first time?
We did have this. Yes.
We did. Okay.
I renamed it because there's technically a Print Center app for Mac now that was always just like this print dialog that would show up, and now there's actually an app for it. I think the print action, something about it changed though. I don't remember exactly what it was.
Okay.
But yeah, just in general, you can continue to do that in what is now the new Print Center app.
The Print Center app is kind of baffling on iPad. It shows up when you print and then just disappears. There's no way to open. I'd love some kind of I'd love this app to be more fully fleshed out.
No, yeah. Now it's it is. That's what I mean. Like in macOS, you can search for Print Center and or in Sonoma, you can search for it and do something.
Yeah, I bring a full print app to iPad. I want to, look at past print jobs and that'd be cool.
Oh, you know what? I just looked at it again on Mac. There is a new action called Print Documents for the Print Center app that's separate from the print app. Maybe that's why I got confused also.
Oh, okay.
So you can specify which printer.
I see. Okay.
That's nice. So it is better.
So there's this new action for selecting a person. What exactly is this for?
This one is also now gone.
Hypothetically, what will this be for?
I don't know. That's why I wrote it. I was like, it looked to be some sort of blend of the new contact sharing cards with Lock Center, or I was trying to figure out when you search for someone in Spotlight and tap on their name and it has all their that fancy contact thing. I was wondering if somehow that was part of that. I think again, we might never see this action again. That sounds like something that they were I don't know why they released these in the first betas and then it just disappears. It seems like it was they're oh, we did not mean to do that. So yeah, just I think another awkward one.
Okay.
It was somehow contacts related, but again, I could see Vision OS too is they don't have a contacts app, but you can find a person and send them something or something like that.
So we didn't get a fancy new passwords app in iOS 17, which I think all of us wanted this to be a thing. Instead, we got an action that lets you open directly to the passwords in the settings app. And I'm sure this was probably one of the very first actions you turned into a little fake app on your home screen.
Yes, I built out I just use the widgets, so I have too many shortcuts to put on my home screen that take me ages. I did do that at one point, and it wasn't. The widgets are a lot nicer, but totally open passwords. There is a search field though, which is cool, so you can actually I just put in. I'm always trying to open my own Gmail thing, to get the 2-factor thing out, and so just pre-programming in searches to your favorite passwords is a great way to do that.
It's interesting with that. I found it's pretty good at being in the quick type bar, I think they call it, for auto completing with the 2-factor.
Yeah, I just use Amazon and I have enough that I sign in pretty regular. Plus, during beta season, I reset my iPads like every few days this season because I was having a lot of issues with the widgets, and so I was signing in over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can filter down to just two-factor stuff, or are you searching for certain websites with that?
You can. It just has keywords, so you could put in to the notes field of stuff 2FA if you wanted to.
Okay.
But otherwise, I just typed in like Amazon, and I knew it was the one that I had I needed a two-factor for, so I just built out like 8 of them to fit the medium widget. Kind of thing. And then one that just lets me type in a search.
Very cool. I'm very excited for when iOS 17 officially rolls out to start using the family sharing for passwords. That's gonna be powerful because I've tried getting my family onto 1Password. We had the family thing, and it just never takes. Like,
that's why like these shortcuts are like you give them to your family so they can access the passwords.
Yes,
and you don't need it as much.
Yeah, exactly. The Tips app. I'm not sure I'll ever use this, but I guess for accessibility, as you say.
So this one is also now gone, and I think should stay dead. I don't know why they did this. Like, it seemed to be built off of developers can now provide tips.
Right. Yeah, that's a big new thing for developers to.
This seemed to me like again, I put on my tinfoil hat, and I was like, next year apps will be able to run shortcuts, because then if an app could provide a shortcut that had their tip in it and that shortcut could automatically surface somewhere else, it would make sense. But until somebody else can provide tips, I don't know why I'd ever set up a shortcut to show me the tip that I already know about. Like, yeah. If I worked there, I'd be like, why are we doing this? Don't do this. So that is just an odd one. And I agree. Again, though, like giving it to someone else maybe, or like if somehow I could provide tips through the Tips app to other people.
That'd be cool.
Like maybe, but again, I don't really functionally understand it.
Yeah. So next up, the Mac got in action. That makes me very jealous and kind of angry still of starting up a time machine backup. And we still, on an iPad, even these 2 terabyte iPads, are only able to back up to iCloud, which iCloud maxes out at 2 terabytes, which provides no additional space for anything else, just backing up a single device. So please, Apple, add time machine backup or some kind of local backup scenario for iPad, or give us like 10 terabytes of iCloud storage. Either one, you pick.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this one is definitely nice. I don't really use Time Machine. I think iPad, maybe this is blasphemy, but something about iPad forced me to not ever use files. Like, I use apps that have their own sync systems, and so the one thing that, of course, does get me is Final Cut Pro and Ferrite is Ferrite audio.
I've got like a 400 gigabyte app within Ferrite. I'm terrible at archiving and offloading to like external hard drives.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I think because especially with Final Cut before I had to, I really just embraced that. And at least for podcasts, the files are small enough that most of the time it's not an issue, but with video files, it's just massive. But otherwise, almost everything I've done since, and it was because of the iPad, because you kind of couldn't use file systems for a while, but I just kind of embraced stuff that lived outside of that. And I think in the long run too, I don't know, this is maybe getting more meta than I realized we were going to get, but like Shortcuts enables that, where files were the only like transmutable information for data before. But now with Shortcuts, I can get each row out of that spreadsheet, and I don't need plain text for something to be portable. I need it to be Shortcuts capable, and that's why Shortcuts is like the answer for me to everything, because now rather than having like files, I have files and metadata associated with it and stuff that I can get in batches and do all this operations off of. That now people are like, oh, I need, like Obsidian to me is like, I'm like, I do all that in Airtable and Ulysses combined across these apps rather than having one thing that does it all, and Shortcuts enables that. And that is like the benefit of iPad, and this whole ecosystem goes beyond where we were with computing into this whole other realm. And I feel like that's the thing that's missing from every iPad discussion, or like Shortcuts as part of this ecosystem, rather than using like one app that does it all. This all should be working together.
Yeah,
and I think we're still in the middle of that transition. I think what's been so fascinating about Shortcuts is living through the proof of things take 5 years to happen in like major technology shifts. And in many ways, Shortcuts is still barely, like, we just got the Shortcuts for Mac like 2 years ago. So
yeah,
really pushing this whole platform forward is going to keep taking a while. But
right,
I think we're still, again, like going into future modes. None of the stuff with Vision Pro automation capabilities would be possible without Shortcuts being as accessible as it is. So how did I get here from Time Machine? What the heck?
I have no idea. I love it.
I love it.
One day we'll have to have a
I just had to get that out, because that is like why this ecosystem works in other people who don't see that. If you don't do this, it doesn't work. So like, I get it.
Yeah. With the simulator with Vision OS, am I right that the Shortcuts app is not functional quite yet?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think it's just Shortcuts for iPad on Vision. So
I'm very excited to early 2024 have a special episode out of our yearly September chat of Vision OS Shortcuts and what that's like.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I think it does remain to be seen. And this was what I was trying to figure out, is like, do I go there and try to make that work? Because I have the vision for what it for what it should be, and like, if they're not actively using Shortcuts the way I am, like, are they even thinking about that? So
Right.
I kind of was poking around this summer. I was like, are you guys like on this? Like, are you making Shortcuts for Vision? And if not, you guys got any room at the table? Like, sort of thing. But again,
Yeah, it was
still
encouraging that it was an app on the default, whatever apps they showed.
I just want Minority Report style Shortcuts. Like, I want to throw the Shortcuts around the room, and I think they're more thinking you just run the Shortcuts with your voice. And I'm like, no, I want to live in my Shortcuts.
Yeah, totally 3D VR version of Shortcuts.
Yeah, it's like stack them all up next to me and be like, away with ye, and throw them off to the side. So
that is the cool thing. Ken Case and I were speaking about Vision OS and the concept of layers in 3D assets within Vision OS could be pretty cool for things like Shortcuts, where you have layers of actions grouped together, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, the physical metaphor to understand how a shortcut works in Vision space is what I want. Like,
yeah,
because the linear part of it is what confuses a lot of people. And like, how can I like represent actions connecting to each other and like outputs moving from one step to the other in a like complete visual way, is like, you can really kind of see that become this like future computing thing that makes it make a lot more sense. And then I can just grab it and set it aside and like that kind of stuff. So it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Like,
it is.
I think that's where like the first day the Vision Pro came out, I was like, whoa, that looks really cool. Like, cool Apple hardware. And then that night I was like, holy crap. Like, it took a minute for it to hit me.
Yeah, for sure. So, just a storage update as we talked about Time Machine. I'm using 825 gigabytes on my 1 terabyte. 325 of that is Ferrite. And I'm going to soon have a problem with my new transcript app by the Ferrite developer, because that's already taking up 7 gigabytes, and I've only done 2 transcripts. So I'm going to be very vigilant about offloading my transcripts. Yeah.
Even still, you should have some sort of external. Like, I see why you want Time Machine now, because if that has all your audio files and that's the only backup.
I have a Synology, so I need to do better about archiving those to the Synology.
I just share them to Dropbox after I'm done, and I just keep the audio files in there.
Yeah. But yeah, Ferrite. It's that is why it's also part of like, oh, that's why my iCloud's so full, is it's backing up this 800 gigabytes worth of data. Yeah.
True.
So I believe the last new action that we know about is the ability to change the wallpaper. This is the lock screen wallpaper or the home screen, or both.
It's a combination. So you notice you put in your notes. I could have sworn I was doing this before.
Yeah,
you can set the wallpaper, which is different than changing it. So the reason this changed is there used to only be one wallpaper, and now each lock screen is combined with the wallpaper.
Yeah.
So like, if you can have, like, if you use set wallpaper, it will change what the current lock screen / wallpaper situation is to your new wallpaper, but you can still have like your other one. And those are tied to focus modes also. So it's a little confusing coming from where we used to be, but basically now it's like I have the weather wallpaper, and I also have like the space one, and those are just alternates for the home screen. And I can't set a photo to those. I mean, I could use set wallpaper to switch it, but like I can't just like that would then I'd no longer have the space one. So it's kind of just like a way to switch in between them, which then if they are tied to focus modes, it will change your focus mode also and your home screen. So this is kind of a change home screen action itself it's not like go to page 5 though or something also. So I think, again, it's a little confusing, and I think they should have change page on the home screen so that I can go to page 5 of a specific wallpaper, and like even within a focus mode, because that would be like, I want to do my work thing and it's on page 3, so I can switch to the work focus mode and change which page on the page there.
Yeah.
So layers and layers of metaphors for where exactly you are. But I think it's like these wallpapers are associated with the lock screen, so you'll still maintain your lock screen widgets. It would just change the artwork for it.
Okay.
No, wait. This will literally, that would be set wallpaper. Change wallpaper will move to a different lock screen that has, I'd have to test it with, because they also like, you don't always have to associate the lock screen with the wallpaper. So that might be the one confusing thing. I think most of it, but like when you use it, you go in and you select a wallpaper. So like, it's pretty clear as you're utilizing it, how it works.
Gotcha. And that is the last new one? Did I forget anything?
I mean, there's other features, but I think that's it. Let me double check. I think there was something around the wait action now supposedly does work for like multiple minutes. This was one thing that like people try to be like, wait 4 days, and it doesn't work. So I think it's extended, but I personally don't recommend these kind of things, because if you try to do 2 hours and it doesn't work, you're going to be upset. And so like, I don't want to recommend something that's likely to fail, but also like a couple of minutes can work now more.
Oh, good. Because I did try to use that in the past, and it's so frustrating where I'm like, even waiting 10 minutes is like not working.
Yeah. It's like, I use it when I make API requests to wait 1 extra second so that it doesn't overload the thing. And I think that's kind of what it was designed for. And like when it was workflow, you can't run anything in the background. So there was never this expectation that you could close the app and it would continue working. But yeah. So that, again, test it. Yeah. And especially if you're combining it with true automations.
Yes.
That's just like, what is happening? Like 2 hours later, something happens.
Right. So we've mentioned before, but app intents are powering interactive widgets, which also powers shortcuts. And then kind of what ramifications here, does this mean as developers are working on these widgets, they'll just by default have these show up in shortcuts, or will they have to like put a toggle that says do this please too?
So, somewhat. I mean, they have control. Like there's a certain function of app intents that will provide their app intents is essentially another word for the actions in shortcuts, but it's a way that they can do it outside of the ecosystem. So like right now on a widget, you can like refresh the widget, and you would never want to provide that as a shortcut action, so they can hide it from the Shortcuts app. But functionally, yes, app intents means that if the developer is going in to adopt interactive widgets, it's kind of like, well, you might as well do shortcuts too, since you just built the half of the functionality out of it. And so I think this is, again, Apple kind of doing this strategically where, I mean, I don't know if it's strategic or just functional, also not like a sneaky thing, but just by adopting interactive widgets, you're kind of already getting into shortcuts too and focus mode type stuff. And so hopefully it is like not forcing, but just kind of funneling developers through the shortcuts channels as well. So we should just be able to see more. And because App Intents is a more modern API than what the custom intents and series stuff we had before, shortcuts will just be more powerful and built more according to what you would expect from more recent or like the most powerful actions rather than what used to be standalone Siri shortcut type things.
Okay. And it's backwards compatible, so those old stuff keeps working, kind of.
They have to do stuff to make it. I mean, if they still have it, it'll keep working.
Yeah.
But going forward, I think the interactive widgets was like they had to redesign things to be able to take advantage of this. So it should be like, maybe they won't prioritize it ahead of interactive widgets, but I think throughout the next year, we should see a lot more apps get more powerful shortcut support. And like just a reason to do it where they maybe didn't last year. Like one of my clients didn't have shortcuts last year, and now it is like, well, we have the interactive widgets. Like, what do we do with app shortcuts now and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's awesome. And then we mentioned it briefly before, but watchOS can find apps are more independent with shortcuts. Like there are actions by watch apps that can run on the watch when you're away from your iPhone, which is a brilliant thing.
Yeah, it's huge. I haven't, again, tested this too much. I think the one weird thing is all those app shortcuts. They're adding a feature that's called, it's just like Siri will intelligently match if you use a synonym phrase like find instead of get on the phone. It'll like understand that and route you to the proper app shortcut. On the watch, it does have to be exact. So I think it's kind of like, I mean, the watch just can't handle as much immediate on-device processing, but it should be able to do more and more. I think this is one of those ones where I think because I do this at scale, I have a lot of trouble testing watchOS shortcuts because I need to make sure they even sync in the first place, and then running it with Siri and making sure it works, and like then optimizing it is that roundabout loop always just drives me nuts. And so like I need to do more of this, but definitely the watch is in general becoming a lot more independent. And so I hope that we do get a fully independent watch, it can just kind of run shortcuts and do some more advanced stuff there.
Yeah, for sure. Anything we didn't touch on that you'd like to before we wrap it up?
I mean, in general, I think the Mac stuff is going to be pretty interesting. I think putting the extra large or any size shortcut widget onto your desktop is just going to make shortcuts more prevalent for people, especially just tiny little functions. Most people probably won't have 10 widgets like me, and there's no sort of stacking. So that's what I would love for sure. But just making it accessible on every device in a way that has priority focus, I think is going to be big for shortcuts, just because when you want to use something, you can go find it and it's right there. And so that is true of Spotlight as well. I think that's going to be, especially for iPad, and if you have a keyboard, just command space, type for the thing and do it is like a perfect experience. I just don't use Spotlight on the Mac, so I should more, because just running my shortcuts there is great too. But overall, I think the automations thing is going to be a big feature too. It's just going to let you use shortcuts without using it. Like you don't have to try, it just works. And so people always love that as well. So in some ways, it always feels like this with shortcuts, but it's almost like a reset where now the app works like you expect it, and you can kind of get your expectations fulfilled rather than going in and maybe being disappointed at that point. So they really just need to add those camera controls, man. All those little functions are the things that people want. We all know how to do the basic stuff.
Organization.
Yeah, exactly. Stage manager would be huge too. So I think there is it seems like clearly low-hanging fruit that they could add in and kind of fill those remaining gaps. And then it's like, I think I don't know, like the iPad has gotten so many pro features, but the software hasn't in the way that we pros need it. And so iPadOS and shortcuts in particular are the opportunities to fulfill those roles for power users in the way that they really need them and can't otherwise get it done on the operating system at all. And that's what makes the iPad something that's both for the everyday user and the pro user, way more than a Mac is, where they can't use it for their everyday, or maybe they can, but they just don't want to. And the iPad is just fun to use too. So
yeah,
I felt like I just gave a little speech.
No, that was fun.
That's the perfect thing for podcasts, though, is like just get it all out at once.
Yeah. No, I've enjoyed this chat. I always enjoy catching up with you. So far, it's been once a year, but I do think next January, as they release it early 2024, we'll have to have a chat.
Man, that's why I was to get the iPad review unit. I was like, this might be perfect timing. Hey, you guys need shortcuts on the Vision. I need to test it. You really need me to test it.
Absolutely.
That's for your sake.
Yeah. I do wonder if they'll optimize the app for launch, or if that'll be like a Vision OS 2 thing in the summer of...
Yeah, I'm going to have to... My corporate hat is going to say it'll take a minute to get right. Because if you really are doing it fully, you got to give it time.
You remember watchOS 1 was available for like 3 months before 2 shipped.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting that they'll ship Vision OS 1 in spring or late winter or whatever, and then we'll have the beta for Vision OS 2 probably just a couple months later with the summer beta cycle.
Man,
I'd imagine.
I can't imagine filing shortcuts feedback for Vision OS. It's like, oh, here, replicate this. That'll be interesting.
Where can people dig into your shortcuts catalog and all the stuff that you're creating?
MatthewCassinelli.com is where everything is located. I've got the shortcuts library and everything all in the menu bar. The membership is $15 every 3 months and then $50 a year. And yeah, I've got a new membership podcast and tons of content coming. I've been a little slow over the summer because I've been building this stuff out, but
yeah.
I've always have endless projects going forward. I think that's been why I switched to OmniFocus. So that has been super helpful. But yeah, otherwise just sign up for the newsletter and you'll get all the content. I'm doing it currently every 2 weeks or so.
Okay.
But yeah.
Very cool. And I love the every 3 month thing. That's like a nice change from the monthly subscriptions. Like, okay, every 3 months I can handle that.
Like something about monthly made it felt like I was trying to just do each month rather than get good shortcuts. And I got kind of into that rat race. So I sort of shifted things out now, but summer is always a good time to do that. And there's so much shortcuts opportunity at all times. So
for sure. Well, thank you, Matthew. I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that has been a discussion with Matthew all about shortcuts. Make sure to check out Matthew's work over at MatthewCassinelli.com. My thanks again to Matthew for his time recording, and my thanks to you for your time and attention tuning in. And my thanks again to Agenda for sponsoring this episode of iPad Pros. You can support this podcast by trying out Agenda. Learn more at www.agenda.com. Get early access to both iPad Pros and Vision Pros by subscribing at patreon.com/iPad Pros or by subscribing in Apple Podcasts. With that, I'll talk to everyone again real soon.